Hello. Right, it's Phil back with Professional Painter and Decorator, and you've seen the thumbnail. Yes, it's about time I just touched on paint conditioners, and you're going to be saying to me, Phil, what's paint conditioners? Because you think of a conditioner that you stick in your hair or you stick into your washing machine and stuff like that. It's not that. It's stuff you add to paint. Now, there are a few companies that do this sort of thing. I've got these at the moment. There's another company there that probably a few of you are using that product. But these are particular paint conditioners that go into water-based paints. Now, you're going to say to me, Phil, I've never heard of a paint conditioner before, and I want to know a little bit more about it. Where do you use it? What do you use it for? And what's the benefits? It's all the usual. Right, let's talk about this. The simplest way I can describe it, and Ian, if you saw the video on going around the painting and decorating show, Ian at Smith & Roger touched on it perfectly. Over the years, paints have altered, and I'm talking about water-based paints now, but generally paints across the board, whether it be oil-based or water-based, have altered. Now, Ian knocked the nail on the head, and he described it a little bit like how my father describes paint when he says, all the good stuff that was in paints that made them a pleasure to use have been taken out. Now, that might be for regulations on the stuff that's going in, it's probably not so good, or it might be a case of down to cost. Now, Ian described his product, the Flow and Bond, very much like a product you add back into paint that puts the stuff in that we used to have in paint, but it's not in it anymore, so you have to add it yourself. Does that make sense? But you're still going to say to me, Phil, well, what's the advantage of adding these sorts of things? Well, these are the two products I've got, as I said earlier. Let's just touch on this Benjamin Moore one. Benjamin Moore do an extender. Now, you put a bit of this into your paint to help it flow out, to help the application be a bit easier, to help it grip and adhere, and generally make it a little bit easier, and generally to make it a little bit easier to work. Now, I know you're going to say, and I've got a tin, let me see if I can find it. Scuffex. I'll just pop down and pop back up again. Scuffex. I've had a job recently where I've used Scuffex all the way through the house, and they've got big, and when I mean big doors, this is a new build house that the customer wasn't happy with the woodwork quality that the painters had left it. Say no more. And they wanted a nicer finish, i.e. they didn't want that flat eggshell finish that a lot of contractors are using in these new builds, and they wanted something with a bit more sheen. Well, we went with Scuffex. It's tried and tested, we like it. But the trouble was the house was quite warm. Now, I didn't want to be doing these large, virtually panelled doors with a paint, albeit I've been using a roller. I was using a Two Fussy Blokes roller. I didn't want that paint going off on me too quickly by the time I'd cut my mouldings in, cut around the edges and started to roll it. So I added a little bit of this. Now, to a tin of paint, which, you know, the larger tins are just under 4 litres, I put, let's put this one down, I put 100 ml, which is probably at the maximum you'd want to put into that paint to mix it in, to help it flow out, to help the application, to help the adhesion, to help it not dry off on me too quick. So when you looked at a door, it didn't look the telltale signs of you've used a roller, you've rolled it out, but you could see it was drying off. And it leaves, I don't want to use the word flashing because it's slightly not flashing. It's more of a case that the flashing is the element of it drying off on you too quickly when you've got large doors, because they were a lot bigger than what Doris the door was. So in that instance, this extender helped me, even though I was using Scuffex, which is a dream of a paint to apply, it just gave me that little bit more open time. And you say, Phil, what does open time mean? I'm going to mean time you can work with the paint before it starts drying off and starting to dry, or not say set, but starting to dry and actually start forming a skin. Because if you start going back over paints that have dried, that's where you start getting you can see where your brush has been, you can see where the roll has been, and that's what we call as a flashing. So that is very much beneficial if you've got that scenario. And just to say what it says on the tin, if anybody wants me to read it out, hold on. like Professor P. Oh, Joe 90. Look like Joe 90, don't I? Stop laughing. Right, so it just really, what it says on the side of the tin is what I've just explained to you. Right, it extends open time, and that's what I'm on about. You can keep a paint going without it drying off on you. Maintains film performance. Adding this to your paint or adding that doesn't change the actual makeup of the paint. It's not like adding water and it thins down that ratio of pigments and bits and pieces in that tin of paint that you're actually reducing what the things are in the paint. This doesn't affect it. So it maintains film performance. It's versatile, ideal for all water-based paints. I touched on that, I said that. And it's for all forms of paint applications. So this can be used for brushing. It can be used for steaming up long. Can be used for brushing, can be used for rolling like I did do. And it's also very beneficial for when you're spraying. So that from Benjamin Moore, around about, if I say around about £22, something like that, and you've got typical again, Americans, just under a litre. There's 946 ml in that, which is 32 fluid ounces. What's nice about that, it has got your, can you see? It has got your ratios on the side for what your dilution needs to be. So very good, and it worked with Scuffex. You can use this with any paint. It doesn't have to be with Scuffex. So let's just move on to Ian's Smith & Roger. Back with you and back in the room. Your Smith & Roger, all these sorts of extenders, and the one that you've seen just there and the one I've just shown you, they're all of much of a muchness. They're all roughly around about that £20 mark for that sort of size canister, and this is a litre. They're all doing roughly about the same sort of thing. If you've not tried it yet, give it a go, because I don't want to say it's a game changer, because there's other things that are game changers, but this is here to help the decorator. It's to help the DIY, it's to help the semi-pro, and it's there to help you get a better finish with your paint, a better performance out of your paint, and all the things that you're probably struggling with applying paint. This will help you. And as I said, Ian was telling us all the bad things that were taken out of paint that were good, we can put it back in. Right, so just what does Ian's Flow and Bond do? This is exactly the same sort of principle as what the Benjamin Moore is. It's a paint conditioner that mixes into all water-based masonry and interior paints to aid adhesion, flow and coverage. Now, I've been using this, I'm not sure when this video goes out, but I've been using this only a few days ago, mixing in with some emulsion paint, and the emulsion paint that I was using was Jono's Durable Matte. Now, this is a 1 to 10 ratio, so it's a 10%. Don't add any more, particularly with this, don't add any more than 10% of this to your paint. Now, I added a careful splash just to help that emulsion paint go on. Now, what's interesting is this helps with, it says it there, the flow and the coverage. Now let's call it a 10%. If you added 10% of this to your paint, you would notice a reduction of 20% in how much paint you're using. Does that make sense? Because I had 2 large walls to do, and I don't know whether you've seen on any reels or any Instagram where I've actually been showing you the room that I've been doing. I only used I only had a 2.5 litre tin, because I didn't want to buy a 5 litre tin, because I knew it would be far too much. And it's always a case that if you don't buy enough, you're always going to need a bit more. And if you buy too much, you've got over 2.5 litres left over. There were 2 large walls on this room, and I added some of this to it. It helped it go on. It helped with the open time, because it obviously allowed me to roll and cut in, and it wasn't going off on me. But I did notice that after one coat, I'd used nearly half of that 2.5 litre tin, which I thought, it's going to be a little bit touch and go. So with this added to it, by the time I'd finished the second coat, and I know people are going to say to me, Phil, you always use a little bit less paint than you normally do when you're applying a second coat. But knowing that this was in it, you won't believe how much paint I'd still got in that tin by the time I'd finished. So I have got touch up for that customer if they need it. But I was very surprised that when it said on the back, if you add this, it helps with saving up to 20% worth of paint. I actually noticed that. I had paint left over that I thought I might be just leaving an egg cup full in that tin. But that's by the by, that's me actually using this. This is something, again, I say to people, whether I'm testing paints out, give it a go yourself. Now this stuff, if you've read the back of the tin, it did, these are the old tins, it did say that only use it on that first, only use it on that first application of first coat of paint. That's not true anymore. Having spoken to Ian about it, it is a case that you can use it in all your layers of paint. So whether it be the first coat or the second coat, you could still keep with that paint mix that you've got up, that you've got together, that's got this in it. So just talking about when you put it on first coat or second coat, on the back of the tin it did say that you only need to apply it to your first coat, but we know that's not true, because it was saying only add flow and bond to the first coat of water-based paint. We don't. You can add it to all the paint and use all that paint for the job that you're actually doing if you so require. It says apply the mix following the paint manufacturer's instructions, as adding flow and bond will not alter these recommendations. It's like what I said to you about the Benjamin Moore. It doesn't alter that actual makeup of the paint. It's not thinning it down. It's not changing the opacity of what that actual paint is. And just jumping in, just going to the last line, which we know is not true. It says allow to dry and apply subsequent coats without the flow and bond. That's, chuck that away. That doesn't make any sense now, because that's not the case. They've altered it. Right, drying times. You'll find that adding this extender won't necessarily alter any drying times. It will probably keep your paint application a lot easier to apply and then dry off naturally as the paints would do anyway. What else? Coverage, I've said about the 20% extra. This is something that if you've not tried it yet, it is something you want to try, because if you've got masonry paints jobs coming up in the next few months, this might help you with that application of paint to a surface, because you can apply it by brush, you can apply it by roller, and as the Benjamin Moore and the other products out there that are doing this same sort of thing, you can add it to spray painting as well. But all in all, I'm going to say to you, if you've not come across any of these yet, if you're liking to try these sorts of things, give it a go, because it's not going to hurt your paint, and you actually might find that it's making your paint life easier. And is paint life a registered trademark of Chris's, the Idaho painter? If so, Chris, I'm ever so sorry, but it's just the way it came out. Your paint life, you know what I mean. You're painting life a lot easier adding stuff like this. So as we're just looking on the side of the instructions on this flow and bond, it says mix into all water-based paints to save time and reduce brush and roller marks, and that is why I've been using it on the job with that Johnson's durable matte, which actually was a dark colour. It was very nearly black. Can be mixed into all paints that are designed for masonry. This is the interesting bit, UPVC and plastic. So if you are painting that sort of thing, you can add a little bit of this to it. And don't forget, I'm saying no more than 10%. You don't need any more than 10%. You can add it to any paints that are going over plaster, wood, glass and varnish surfaces, because this is going to aid with your adhesion, because this is very much an added adhesion property extender. So it does help. Give it a go. Just please give them a go, whether it be this, that or the other. They're all doing virtually the same sort of thing. Nothing's, I'm going to say, no one is better than the other. They're doing about the same sort of thing, and they're also roughly about the same sort of price. So yeah, let's try and educate you into trying something a bit different. Yeah, let's try and, if you've not tried anything like this before, give it a go. If there's any questions, ask below in the comments. Like and subscribe, just the usual stuff. Thank you.